Welcome to the SBGrid YouTube channel. Software tutorials by developers, lectures by structural biologists, unique content brought to you by SBGrid.
Welcome everybody. So just some housekeeping stuff. So this is our second to last webinar of this academic season. The next webinar will be June 9th, and that's going to be Mart Last from the Allegretti Lab, and talking about POM and AIS. Both of those are some CryoET tools. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to either send a message to the hosts in the chat, use the Q&A feature, raise your hand, and we will try to moderate those. Pick your favorite way if you've got a question, and we will try to go with that. This webinar is going to be recorded and will be up on the SBGrid YouTube channel. And with that, I am happy to introduce Jarrett Johnson, who is a senior developer from Schrödinger, and he's here to talk about PyMOL. I feel like PyMOL needs no introduction other than it is PyMOL, but with that, Jarrett, thank you for joining us, and I will turn the show over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me today. Yes, today I'm going to go over some visualization and CryoEM updates that are coming in PyMOL 3.3. As mentioned before, I don't want to say PyMOL needs no introduction, but it is a common tool that is definitely used throughout this community. It's been around almost ever since I was born. We've had several PyMOL webinars through SBGrid, and we appreciate the continuous collaboration and invites to present our work, and we hope it continues in the future. So for those who are not too familiar with PyMOL, it's primarily a molecular visualization tool. People use it to generate high quality images for purposes of showing off work in presentations, publications, movies, so much so that we've seen the demand for wanting an improved movie making experience in PyMOL. And since the release of PyMOL 3.0, we created what is called the timeline, which sort of augments the ability for individuals to make movies through use of tracks and compositions so that their work in movie making can be a little bit more organized. We have several rendering modes. Everyone's familiar with the popular cartoon representations. We have ball and sticks, volumes, which are one of our more newer representations, which I'll show an example of in a second. And we also have a suite of basic structural biology tools. If you wanted to do something like structural alignments, that is available, and we're continuously upgrading and adding on to our repertoire of structural alignment tools. We also have distance and angle measurement, which you would expect from a tool like PyMOL, the ability to map electrostatic potentials on a surface, and molecular editing tools, rotamer and residue-based mutations are available in PyMOL. Some PyMOL resources for those who want to take a closer look into where to download, get information about how to use PyMOL, and communicate with our community. Here's just a brief list of some of the resources that we offer. Our official location where you can just download our binaries are located on pymol.org. We support Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. So if you're on a desktop, you should be able to just run PyMOL pretty easily. We also have pymolwiki.org, which is graciously hosted by SBGrid, and we continuously thank them for their support throughout these many years to provide high quality and community-driven wiki page for folks to contribute to and view documentation that is sometimes otherwise hard to find. we recently, I don't want to say recently, but within the last several years, migrated from SourceForge to GitHub, which is perhaps the most popular repository website for software projects, and PyMOL open source is available on our GitHub. And if you have any issues with PyMOL open source, feel free to submit a ticket, or if you have any questions, just general questions or ideas about what should be added into PyMOL, folks have already submitted discussion topics, and we continuously try to see what the community is really looking for. And so we definitely invite those. Schrödinger has also provided some documentation and training videos, especially for PyMOL 3. And this is available through our Schrödinger website. The link is here on the slide. But this offers you a Schrödinger curated list of educational modules that are video backed, and you can obtain official recognition for completing these courses as well. For graphics that are coming in 3.3, just wanted to sort of announce that we are going to be improving our graphics, but before doing so, we're sort of doing a rewrite of a lot of our foundation, our backend code. And for those who know PyMOL, a lot of this was written in OpenGL for the past, I guess, ever. At least a couple of decades. And we've seen some of the limitations that the legacy OpenGL implementation has brought us. And we're looking to use Vulkan instead, which unlocks a plethora of modern GPU features and baselines that we could just use to support features that weren't easily possible to do before. And one of the major sort of umbrella of features that we want to introduce into PyMOL is the ability to offload a lot of the CPU work that we've done before onto the GPU. For those who have tried to ray trace movies in PyMOL with transparent surfaces, you may know that sometimes generating these movies with such surfaces could take an extremely long time. CPU is not really fast at generating surfaces like this because of sort of like triangle transparency sorting that has to be done on the CPU. But starting in 3.3, we now give the option for individuals to use their GPU instead to render transparent surfaces. So both the surface generation will be done on the GPU, plus transparency by default will also be done on the GPU. So everything should be just be fast and real time as possible. And one of the questions we usually get when we propose this idea to folks is, will this be NVIDIA only? It's always been my goal to make features in PyMOL as portable as possible. And Vulkan has given us the ability to do that. So we're not going to target only NVIDIA cards, only AMD cards. These will be features that will be accessible to anyone using Intel cards, NVIDIA cards, AMD, and even if you're on Apple Silicon as well. Some graphics and effects are going to be improved in 3.3 as well. You can see an example on the bottom showing an isosurface without effects, so pre 3.3. And optionally, you can turn on some of these effects. And we've turned on here screen space, ambient occlusion, and outlines. We'll also provide the ability for depth of field, PBR materials, cartoon, shadows, etc. And a lot of these graphics and effects we've had before, but were only available in CPU ray tracing. So the things like shadowing, posturization, outlines, these were only available in ray tracing, but now in 3.3, these will be available in real-time rasterization. So you do not need to wait for your CPU ray tracing to finish in order to see your high-quality images be generated. Okay, for CryoEM, specifically, this has been possibly the most requested sort of set of features that we've received in the past decade or so. It's no secret that while PyMOL has the ability to generate really awesome looking figures, PyMOL has its roots in structural biology. And so the needs as X-ray crystallography has evolved even more. A lot of people now are using CryoEM, and even more like these days, people are starting to utilize CryoET. I think even that like the past 7 or so presentations, a lot of like out of 10 or so from the webinars here have been focused on CryoET. So there's an obvious need for PyMOL to adapt its tools to satisfy the needs of the structural biology community. And here I just wanted to just sort of summarize what we currently offer today. In our UI, you have the ability to select discretely specific ISO level values and have surfaces or ISO meshes or even volumes be generated from like a density map. We also have commands that people can use to generate maps, create difference maps, to trim maps, and to resample maps. But a lot of these things are not really well exposed or documented. But these tools do exist. And this is one pain point that we hope to address in 3.3 by providing a centralized UI to do a lot of the processes that exist in people's workflows today. One of our newer contributions to the EM space is volume rendering. It's not that recent, but it's relative to PyMOL features. It is. So volume rendering was introduced back in 2011. It was introduced by our previous tech lead, Thomas Holder, another very prolific PyMOL user. And he was the one who developed volume rendering and also the volume panel. And we're using a lot of the work that Warren and Thomas has done to improve our CryoEM and map visualization even further. So here's just a subset of features that we hope to bring to the community in 3.3, and in a bit I'll show an example, or I'll actually give a demo of what this would look like in PyMOL 3.3. So to start, we have the ability to have a centralized slider where you can see your surfaces at different ISO levels, and it also will display the different statistics that your loaded map will have. You can also resample your map, perform map masking, perform map or model map global alignment, some basic rotamer fitting, which I'll go over if we have some time. Also other things you can do like map sharpening, blur, low pass filters, combining maps, map segmentation, handedness flip, local resolution coloring, blob dust filter and eraser, and so on and so forth. These are features that customers have asked for a long time, and hopefully these features or this set of features will address most of the things that people have asked for. And just briefly to touch on the growth of CryoET and if PyMOL has any sort of, I guess, answer to CryoET. I mean, this field is still developing, but before we jump too much into CryoET, we want to make sure that we have a good foundation of visualization for CryoEM first. But I believe CryoET is really a good sort of test case to really showcase how powerful Vulkan can be. And with Vulkan, one of the things that I've worked on is try to see how much the GPU's limit can be pushed. One of the things that I worked on for CryoET is the ability to load in tomograms. Tomograms could be many, many gigabytes large. I think the largest I've loaded into PyMOL 3.3 was like 50 gigabytes or so. And PyMOL has no issues. There's, of course, some tricks that PyMOL will do to sort of downsample the map so that it can be easily loaded in. But we have plans to, as you're viewing the tomogram, have the native resolution be visualized locally as you're scrolling through the view space. Particle placeback is something that will also be provided in 3.3 in an experimental form. So what this would look like is if you're using something like Relion 5, you can generate a particle.star file. And if you have some sort of model file, you can map this model onto different particles across space. And so as you can see on like the bottom here, there's a placeback command that you can use that's also exposed in the Map Tools UI that will take both a star file or a star object and a model file, combine those into a constellation of the model mapped onto the transforms that are provided in the dot star file. Okay, now I will demonstrate the demo real quick. I'm going to pull off PyMOL here. Okay, so this is our current iteration of the map tools. As you can see, there's two major sections with this map tool. On the top, we have the ever-persisting section where you can select which map that you want to control, the contour slider, and also which kind of styling that you want to present it in. We also have different sub-tabs, which I'll go through a little bit by bit. And these sort of highlights and showcases the features that were presented in the slide before. So let's load an example straight from the EMDB. So you can do this by both providing an EMDB ID or provide the PDB ID, which will also grab the corresponding map as well. And so, for example, I'll probably just grab 5A1A PDB with with its corresponding EMDB map, and then fetch. And then the model will load here, and the map is also generated on the right side. If you've ever worked with PyMOL, the map itself doesn't have any sort of immediate visualization here. You can auto create it with this isosurface option here too. I skipped over this just so I can also show you that you can also just generate it with this surface button above. So when we click surface, you can see that the surface is generated on top of the model here, or from the map. The contour slider will basically show you the isocontour for this given surface. So as you change the slider, you can see basically the surface mesh for parts that meet at this ISO level. And this probably is where I'll probably pause so that I can show you some tools that you can use to sort of remove a lot of this noise that comes from this map. The other thing that you can generate from the load tab is a map from a model that's already been loaded into PyMOL. And so let's do that actually. And we will probably do something with that later. So we can select our model, select which type for masks. We can do something like a van der Waal and then generate that here. And on the right side, as you can see, we generate our map for this. And again, if we needed to generate a surface for this, we can select this map and then select surface, and we get the van der Waals representation for this map that was generated by the model itself. But coming back to our experimentally generated map, this is what it looks like. Again, nothing new as far as visualization goes here in PyMOL, but the ability to do all this through map tools is much more streamlined. For the display tab, we can select which surface that we want to treat and change different properties of the surface, like the transparency. In previous PyMOL, this might have been a little bit slow, but because we're going pretty heavy on GPU features, a lot of this stuff is pretty quick these days. So I'll probably just keep the transparency about here, just probably for the rest of the demo. We also have a slider to hide dust. So if you have all of these little particles, noise that you kind of want to get rid of, there's a few ways to do this. I think probably one of the more common ways to do this is probably to create a mask around the model itself, take the experimental map and mask it with the map that was generated by the molecule, and you'll generate a masked version of this surface, and that will get rid of all of the other sort of noise and dust that is sort of outside of the model, outside of a certain angstrom cutoff. But for high dust specifically, if you wanted to, you can tell, or you can use the slider to give a cutoff of all of these dust particles, depending on like what volume they are. You can provide a cutoff to remove any dust that is below a certain volume cutoff. And this gives us a nice clean visualization of the map without a bunch of noise, given a specific contour level. For time, I probably won't go through everything here, but you have the ability to carve surfaces from a given PyMOL selection and also distance. You can resample a map, downsample or upsample your map, show different representations like slices. If you've ever used that in PyMOL, you're now able to just do this with like a click of a button. You wanted this not to be tracked with the camera, or if you did wanted this to be tracked with the camera, you have the ability to do this too. Again, try to bring a lot of what PyMOL already offers, but into a centralized tool.
Jarrett, could I interrupt you with a brief question, or I guess hopefully brief? So could you say a little bit about the current state of map handling that you're talking about? Does this do any symmetry transformations or translations or centering, or is this just displaying what's loaded in the map versus taking what's in the map and then trying to update it to where the model is or where the view is?
More of the latter. So in PyMOL currently, we have a function called SYM exp that will expand your symmetries out, and that's also sort of been improved in 3.3 as well. Before map tool specifically, this is mostly about visualization and processing of maps.
Okay, thank you. Historically, PyMOL had done some things where they would do infinite density with crystallographic maps. And it sounds like this is, well, you don't have crystallographic symmetry for CryoEM or CryoET. So thank you.
Yep. If there's other questions too, I'm happy to answer as well if you wanted to post any in the chat. Moving on to our processing tab, we have even more features that are new to PyMOL 3.3. Again, I probably will have enough time to go over everything. But another requested feature we got was the ability to sort of target spot erase noise within space. So you can bring out our eraser, increase the size, decrease the size as well, and basically tell the eraser where to chop off density at. And if you wanted this eraser to be erasing small dust or small blobs of density in 3D space, you have the ability to do that. It may be more convenient just to do this as a sort of 2D projection. And to sort of give you an example of what that would look like, even though all this dust behind this eraser falls outside of the sphere, if you project it on a 2D space and click erase, probably won't be able to, might need to increase the eraser size here, and then erase, and then talk it off. You can see that this area, or this 2D projection, and any dust sort of behind that circle was erased as well. So you have the ability to change eraser size, change the projection of it, and erase any dust that you might want. And I'll just probably reset the dust cutoff here. Other features, you can create sharpened or blurred versions of your map. So, say for example, I might want to sharpen or blur. Depending on if you go negative, it'll do blur. If you go positive, it'll do sharpen. And it'll create a sharpened or blurred map. But again, you'll want to select this map and then generate a surface from that. And I think actually went to sharpen and not blur, so it's probably the other way around. Or actually, this was probably the wrong map in the first place, but I think you'll probably get the idea. Yep, there we go. So you can generate, again, different maps and, again, create different surfaces, meshes, or volumes from this, all within the same map tools. You also have the ability to combine maps in a certain way. Possibly the most requested one is to perform a masking of two maps to, again, remove a lot of the dust that might come up here. So one thing that you might want to do is take your experimental map, your MOL map or map that was generated by a MOL, and perform something like a multiplication, which is essentially functionally a masking operation. You generate your mask, and from there you can generate a surface from that mask, and should give you something a little bit more cleaner than before. Think I had only planned on doing probably about 30 minutes. I'm running out of time here. But for those who are familiar with map segmentation, we have the ability to color maps based off discrete areas of the map, and it'll segment that. And I don't know if this is really set up for that. But if you've ever used a tool like Seger, this operation will essentially do something similar. You can also mask a map to a specific selection. And all you need to provide here is the actual selection and how much of a buffer that you want. And the edges will provide sort of a soft edge cosine fall off, so that if you're using it for operations like masking, you don't get sort of like harsh edges around your surface. Again, we're bringing out different commands that were available before, like map trim, but bringing it to the tools. If you wanted to, again, trim your map from a specific location, you have the ability to do it here as well. Flip your map. A lot of times when you are loading in a map, sometimes it may be in the incorrect orientation. So we now have a tool where you can click which axis you want to flip your map about. And I might be selecting the wrong map. There we go. And it will flip all of the stylings that are connected to that map. So if you want to flip it to Y, you have the ability to do so now. And this is new functionality that came in 3.3. As far as fitting goes, we're providing a global fitting tool powered by PowerFit to take a model and attempt to globally fit that into an experimental or just any map in general that's been loaded into PyMOL. So for this, you would select your map, you would select what model that you wanted to fit it in, and you can provide any model that's been loaded into PyMOL or through any selection, PyMOL selection that you provide through this input field. And you would just click fit model to map. And yeah, I probably won't do it here because depending on the resolution of the map, this could take a pretty long time. But PyMOL will show the top 10 ranking models, or top 10, sorry, poses that you can just click through to see which model you believe probably fits best. And you could take those and refine it further, which we're planning on possibly supporting in some form or reaching out to additional tools like Schrödinger core suite tools to perform. We also have the ability to attempt to fit your rotamers in densities as well. So if you have, let's say, for example, might try with a more cleaner example here. Seven YK6. All right, so I've loaded in a new entry. And again, we can use the contour slider to just bring this down a little bit. And for rotamer fitting, what I kind of want to show, and this might actually be better with a little bit of transparency. And if we show our sticks in the representation, or throw our model in the representation of sticks, basically what I want to show is that PyMOL now has the ability to fit rotamers into densities. So I've have a scramble rotamer script that just takes a model and just scrambles rotamers about. I'm going to see if I can find maybe some good density here. Maybe this one might be good. Sort of doing this randomly, hope it works. But you can select a rotamer, and there's parameters here that you have access to change the weight of how the scoring function will work to prioritize how much you want densities to be effective versus the bump rotamers, which will try to reduce clashing between rotamers. And when you fit rotamers, guess that wasn't the best one. It will try its best to sort of fit the rotamer into densities. And you also have the ability to just do rotamers for all cases by just putting in the name of the model, but we'll probably have a better UI for this. Like this one fit pretty well, so like this one as well. So maybe I just got unlucky. We're still, of course, working on this, and from just like initial testing, doing this rotamer fitting approach allowed us to recover about over like 90% or so of the Chi-1 rotamer for our testing bench set. For validation, we are still working through a lot of the features here, but if you've ever had something, if you've ever wanted a local resolution map to determine how good parts of your model were mapped, you're able to visualize this as well. But you'll need something like a half map file in order to do this, which don't have immediately available to me, and we're still working out here. But you're able to color by local resolution as well. And possibly the last thing I might want to show off is validation parameters that folks might be interested in if they wanted to see how well their model is correlated to the given map. You can select different modes to quantify different areas compared relative to different other areas in the protein and color by that fit. Or if you wanted something like Q-score, you can calculate that and color by that as well. So just clicking on Q-score here, this will give you a coloring of your model and going from red to blue, where red is the more disordered, or I shouldn't say disordered, but not really well matched to the experimental data, versus blue, which is. We're still working out other features here in geometry validation as far as showing Ramachandran outliers and clashes, but these are things that we will be focused more on in the future. And I think as far as the demo part goes, a lot of things are still sort of working in progress, but hopefully addresses a lot of like the workflow issues that were not really possible in previous versions of the PyMOL, and we wanted to address that with this new panel. So with that said, I would like to thank Thomas Stewart, who's the other half of the PyMOL team, who's sitting right behind me. He's done a lot of work with making the Map Tools panel look very sleek, very modern. Also special thanks to our structure refinement team and the STG structural biology group here at Schrödinger. They've given us a lot of initial guidance and feedback into our first prototypes for the map tools. And of course, the PyMOL users who have been with us for many decades. We also thank you for continuing to use our tools, having faith in us, continuing to give us good feedback, which we can use to address a lot of your concerns and even improve things that you like as well. And we want to continue doing that in the future. And of course, a special thanks to SBGrid Consortium for our continuous presentation of features in PyMOL, and we look forward to doing even more in the future.
Thanks, Jarrett.
And if there's any questions, yeah, I'm free to answer them. We also have an interest form, so this is not yet available in our current version on pymol.org. So for those who are interested in trying out the pre-release versions to give us more feedback as far as like what things work, what things doesn't, we are more than happy to take some of that feedback and work on those as well. You can also email us at pymol-dev-group@schrodinger.com.
Yep. And if folks have questions, then please feel free, raise your hand, use the Q&A, send a chat message, send a smoke signal, any particular method if you've got questions. And one question that occurred to me as you were talking about the rotamer fitting, and I think you kind of hinted at this during the demo, which library is it using for the geometry?
For the rotamer library, we use the one of the older versions of Dunbrack's backbone dependent library for rotamers. But we plan on having the ability for users to input their own rotamer library and use that instead. But for this demo, I had just showed our backbone dependent library, the one that ships with PyMOL already. So we may spend some time improving that library, looking for additional ones too, to sort of augment that. But just wanted to highlight the ability now that you can take rotamers and attempt to fit those into densities.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. It's just it immediately brought up the question in my head, like, oh, you can use geometry now and density. Like, where is the geometry coming from? Because I've used PyMOL for a while and didn't remember there being any geometry in it before. Very cool stuff. And I'm not seeing any raised hands or questions in any of the channels. So you answered all of everybody's questions, I guess, including mine, which is impressive.
Seems so. And I guess to another point you made about rotamer fitting, PyMOL has had sculpting. I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with this feature, but it basically allowed sort of in real time to use some sort of off the cuff like force field to try to minimize a lot of like van der Waals interactions so that the bonds and angle and also bond and angle optimization. So we're looking into using sculpting along with this like rotamer fitting tool to see if we can do something where like, I don't know if people use like ISLD, but where you can like take a rotamer and try to like manually fit it into density in real time. So we're exploring that option as well, since we already have like the sculpting backend to help us with that.
Very cool stuff. So we've got a question from Maya. And could you talk a little bit about the movie generation in the new version?
Yeah, so the movie generation was something that was actually previously released in 3.0. So if you wanted to use the new movie maker in 3.0, you can just go on pymol.org right now and just start using it. So if you've ever used a tool like After Effects or Premiere Pro or whatever, you have the ability to visualize different tracks in a given movie. And what this allows you to do is individually control different objects, camera, different settings that wasn't really easily doable in the old movie maker, so that you're able to make a lot more, I guess, compelling movies. Is just a better way to visualize the organization of your movie. We have keyframes that you can put into tracks to sort of determine, well, I want my pose at like this second. I want the camera to be here at this sort of time point, or I want the scene that I generated earlier to sort of be activated at this position. So it gives you a lot of control in that matter. And if you want more information, like tutorial or anything, the Schrödinger documentation and online videos that are available, even you can go to the Schrödinger YouTube channel and look, but there's a timeline video that you can look at, and it will give you how to set up all this stuff in the new timeline in 3.0.
I still remember this. So this is a slight tangent, but I was teaching making movies in PyMOL and doing a rotation, and I'm like, you can use this as an example for scripting. Somebody's like, why didn't you just use the button for that? I'm like, oh, because the button, yes, you should use the button. The button didn't exist when I learned it. So
and that's a major thing we're taking with 3.0. It's PyMOL has a very rich scripting command set. But for people who are like just jumping into PyMOL, a lot of these things are just like hard to discover. But if
Yeah.
you give them something like a panel or just like UI, a lot of these things become much faster to just pick up, much faster to iterate through, cut down on time. You can make just like a lot more awesome things.
And it's a lot more discoverable and a lot less reading the manual and figuring out,
Yes.
oh, yes, you can do this.
Yes, 100%.
Which, as an end user, I do appreciate all the documentation available in PyMOL. But
Yes, I try to commit or submit to PyMOL Wiki when I can. And again, thank you for keeping PyMOL Wiki alive. And of course, thank you for also providing a lot of the awesome structural biology tools. I'm sure we and definitely a bunch of other people in the community definitely appreciate that.
happy to help out. All right. I think we should do another call for questions, and then we can thank Jarrett one more time and go on with a spring day for us in the Northern Hemisphere. And I guess it's a fall day if we got anybody in the Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, so a little chilly here in New York City.
All right. Well, once again, Jarrett, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all your work on PyMOL, and look forward to seeing what will come in the new developments here.
Thank you, Pete, for having us. Have a nice day.
Yeah.